I mean, you've seen the news, right? That's not what this is about. I've lived in Paris for the last 8 years. And the news cycle and everything that's going on, the insanity of it, does definitely factor into this. You saw the title. I don't think I'm ever going back to America. And I thought I would share my reasoning why. After living here long enough to get my French citizenship, spending the last year really debating what am I doing with my life, where am I going, and waffling on making any commitments, I have made a commitment. I've made some big decisions, and I thought I would share with you 5 practical reasons why that is, and 3 reasons at a more personal level as well why I don't know that I'll ever even leave Paris, to be honest. Let's begin. Maybe with a little bit of history for those of you that don't really know me that well yet. I've lived in France for the last 8 years, and in Paris specifically, which makes my time in France about a decade in total. And I've lived the majority of my adult life at this point abroad, overseas, between West Africa and Europe. I've been thinking a lot about this because I got my French citizenship a year ago, and that actually triggered a little bit of an existential crisis for me. In the moment, I realized how relieved I felt because whether or not I was fully aware of it at any given moment, my North Star for 7 years was to get my French citizenship. Because when I lived here before, I realized how much I loved my life in Paris, and then visas, they had termination dates, they expired, and I would effectively get kicked out of the country. And that happened to me twice. I've lived in France twice before I ended up living here in Paris this last time. And I was like, I never want that to happen again. So I made it my goal to get my citizenship just so that I could secure my life here in Paris. I wouldn't call myself a Francophile. For whatever reason, I just always wanted to live here. Little recap in case you don't know this about my story. I got to Nice right out of college, taught English for a year, and was like, yeah, maybe I made a mistake. This doesn't really seem like it's for me, which is funny because a lot of Americans seem to be discovering Nice and loving Nice right now, according to some headlines I've seen. But when I got to Paris, I was like, oh, this is what I always wanted. So I managed to come back in the middle of my time while I was in West Africa. I did a year teaching English here while still working with the NGO I used to work with, and I loved it. But at the end of each of those stints, I had to leave, and I didn't have the money, I didn't have the resources to make it work, to apply for other visas. And so it was lodged in my head, no matter what, when I get back, I'm getting my citizenship. And that is it. I'm a Parisian at heart, right? I've been quoting Sacha Guitry a lot on this, and I've been butchering what he said. It's very simple. He said, être parisien, ce n'est pas être né à Paris, c'est y renaître, which is way simpler than how I've been phrasing it. It's that becoming an adult, like developing my own life here, that is at the root of why I will probably never move back to America. And so I thought I would share from the last decade of experience in living in France specifically, but generally in living abroad, why it is that at this point in my life, as I'm on the verge of turning 40, I don't imagine that I will ever move back to the United States. And even before things are seeming to, on a daily basis, get somehow worse every day in the States, this was already the case for me. And these are the reasons why. I have 5 kind of practical reasons and then 3 deeper ones that I think it'll all make sense. But the first and most obvious is probably just the quality of life. Like, my life here is so good. Americans may have more purchasing power like when they travel abroad, but I really feel like life here, we have access to so much. Real estate is super expensive. Like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford an apartment here. I would love to buy an apartment, but when you look at the cost of living to income ratio, we are way on the outside of the index. Paris is rated as being completely unaffordable. And so as a result, like, I don't know for sure that will ever happen. But outside of that, like, everything else feels very, very accessible. Public transportation makes like life in the city very easy. It's easy to be mobile, to get around, to see my friends. Biking has become so easy. It's a walkable city, so I can just walk to the store. So everything I need, basically, I can just walk to get. I just did that very adult thing where I actually dry cleaned my winter jackets before storing them. The ability to just walk and do that, bring them back, go shopping, get the dog stuff, get a rotisserie chicken. When the CNBC video got made, the producer of that video was obsessed with the rotisserie chicken. Like, that was the thing he wanted to see the most once I mentioned it. And it's true. I've got some phenomenal rotisserie chicken in my neighborhood. And even though I feel like I struggle because I have to go 30 or 40 minutes to see my friends because they all live in what I consider the center of Paris, even though so many people would consider where I live to be central Paris, even though I have to do that, and I have this dream of living in another neighborhood in the city, that dream is very accessible to me, and that life is very accessible because even if I have to hop on my bike or the metro to get there, it's easy to do. Food is amazing here. The quality is really good and, again, very accessible. Wine is cheap. We make great beer in France. People don't realize this, but France actually has the most microbreweries per capita in all of Europe. Last I checked, double check that. But Parisian life, like the lifestyle that we have here, is one of the great draws for me. It's one of the real reasons that I always wanted to live here. The beauty of the city, the availability of art and culture. There are things that are lacking here, which is why I love going to London, my favorite suburb of Paris, because it has so many things that are lacking here, like friendly customer service. There are elements of life here that definitely are rough, but there's no perfect place. And overall, I love the lifestyle here. The second would be how like I have a strong connection to international living now that I've lived abroad, like I said, for most of my adult life. And my friends, my closest friends are all people who have similar experiences at this point. They are international in the sense that a lot of them were born in America, but some were born in Australia or here and then lived elsewhere, kind of split souls in a way, where they were born in one culture and kind of grew up in another. All my closest friends are in that arena, and being in a place like Paris makes it really easy to meet more people like that. There are other cities in other parts of the world, obviously, where I could, but it's a really good reason, like relationally, like all my closest relationships are here, which is something that's going to come up here shortly as well. Closely related, and the third point is that French is my second language. I think when you're learning a language and like in school and you first come to a place, it's a foreign language, right? Like you're learning a foreign language, but eventually it becomes your second language or your third or your fourth if you speak more. And it's no longer like an academic exercise. It's actually a part of who I am now. And I felt this before when I first learned French and then moved back to the States. I really missed being able to express myself in that language and being able to use that part of my brain. And that's part of the reason I ended up going to West Africa was the promise of getting to use my French again. Little did I know that wouldn't work out for another year or two. But the idea of moving away from a context in which I get to speak French every day, even if my job is in English and so many of my relationships are in English, French is still a huge part of my life every day. And I would miss that so much. The fourth is reasons that you're probably thinking. Healthcare here is definitely way more affordable. I'm never going to go bankrupt if I get sick. Travel is easy. We're really central and I can see all of Europe super easily. We have trains that go all over the country. Europe as a whole is really accessible, and now as a European citizen, I actually have the right to move to anywhere else in Europe that I want, which we'll kind of come back to that as well, but like that level of freedom and just I could be in another country in a couple of hours for $100. That's wild to me. It's something that I always dreamed of having access to as a kid, and now it's mine. And obviously things like safety, if you look at the homicide rates in the United States, they're like, I was doing this for the pickpockets video we made, just trying to assess what is safety like in France. And because a lot of people think, oh, well, Europe is so dangerous, and anytime something goes wrong in Paris, it makes the news in the States. So it gives people this weird idea that it's not safe here, but we don't have active shooter drills in our schools. And when cars backfire, nobody freaks out. And there's only one city, at least on Wikipedia for like the murder capital list, there's only one city in France on that list, and it's not Paris, and it is Marseille, and it is like 90th on the list. It's way down there, underneath like 70 American cities. So just physical safety and the affordability of things. My cell phone cost me $20 a month. I mean, now I have a professional bundle where my internet costs me $60 a month, and that includes 2 SIM cards. So I have 2 phones and fiber internet for $60 a month on a professional plan. Things like that. And then the fifth is the other obvious thing you're probably thinking, which is that our government is not entirely insane, at least not yet. And we have a right-wing politician who broke the law and now is ineligible to run for president. Weird. Who would have thought that maybe getting convicted of a crime would make you ineligible, at least for a while, from running for office? So there's also a sense of like, oh wow, being in Paris seems very democratic and open. And obviously there are problems here. France has some huge issues, post-colonial problems, racial problems. There are huge problems in this country. I'm not saying there aren't. In fact, there's a lot of work to do, but it feels better right now. Maybe more importantly, there are 3 things that are like at a core level why I don't think I'll ever move back to the States. And it has to do more with my life, again, in Paris specifically. A big one that I've already referenced is that my friends are here. Like my closest relationships, the friends that I have built through the process of getting healthy. Like when I said I've become an adult here, so much of that is doing the work in therapy, settling in, kind of building this tiny but cozy life for myself here, finding myself only even recently feeling like I really live here. Like this is really my home and it's mine. Like I'm so lucky to be here and I am very, very fortunate that I put in all the work that I did to make this stick. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And a huge component of that in developing some self-respect and a different level of health has been that I have also developed some relationships that I would be remiss to walk away from. One of my best friends, Jess, who if you watch my channel, you've seen her a bunch, she and I were talking about that recently in reference to friends of ours who have left and moved to places where they don't know anybody. And maybe this is a stage of life thing, but I think it's also an appreciation. I've started my life over many, many times. I have lived in 5 countries at this point, I think, and had jobs that took me all over the United States, all over the world. And in the past, it was okay because I wasn't ready to settle in a sense, but I also just wasn't healthy enough and able enough to make lasting connections. Now that I'm in that place where I want to and I'm able to, I see the intrinsic value of sticking with what I have. I'm really lucky to have what I have. I want to cultivate that and deepen it. And that is not going to be made possible by moving somewhere and starting over. Even if sometimes the opportunities don't feel as good in France. That was one of the things I had on my list that I didn't mention is like the opportunities in the US, especially like your earning capacity, do seem so much better a lot of the time. But they can also be so much worse. And I don't know if the trade-off is there. And obviously, who knows what's going to happen in the coming months and years. But that's a worthy trade-off. Even if I'm not making as much money as I could, especially with like YouTube and stuff, the opportunities to make money are way better in the US. But that's a trade-off that's worth it if I have good friends and a community here, which is directly tied into that. I have this burgeoning sense of community through what I do for work. What really lights my fire on something like Paris in My Pocket is being able to support local businesses. I love my city and I want you to love my city. If you don't live in Paris and you're coming to visit, I want you to have a good time, which was the initial impetus for Paris in My Pocket. It's why I made it. Why I made videos on how to use the metro, why I recommend places to begin with was just to say, hey, you can avoid the tourist traps, you can avoid the pitfalls. And that was it. It was just trying to be a good ambassador for the city. But like, I didn't come here to be a tour guide. I didn't come here to do tourism. I came here to live my life, to write books, to live in Paris. That's all I really wanted. So what actually motivates me more than anything for Paris in My Pocket specifically is the fact that it can have a positive impact on the local economy and help more people skip, I don't know, Paul, the bakery, or La Durée, or to get away from McDonald's and find a local bakery or a local cheeseburger or a local whatever. Stuff that I love that's really good here that like you can believe is going to be really good. And you see the impact it has, and then you see like how that develops a sense of community, that sense of being known. Having Cooper really changed this. COVID kind of had an impact on it, but that sense of just walking around, even my neighborhood, even though I'm not a big fan of my neighborhood and I would love to leave someday, that sense of even walking down the street in my neighborhood and being recognized is something that has an intrinsic value to it above just being an anonymous person in a city somewhere. And that ties into kind of that final point, which is that my business is here as well. Paris in My Pocket's part of that, but also anything I can do to actively support local businesses and just be a part of the Parisian landscape. It's facilitated by being here. I do still want to travel. I still want to see so much of the world. I would love to see more of Asia. Going to Thailand last year was like a real insight into how much I'm missing out on that I have never seen before. I would love to get back to India. I'd love to go see China. I would love to get to Vietnam, like so many places that I've never been. There is a lot of the world left to see. I still have the desire to travel, but I've also been able to create something here that I don't want to trade just for wandering again. I don't feel like packing up and just throwing my life to the wind, because I've also seen how like you lose that investment in relationships and in a place if you're not present and if you don't make efforts and if you aren't actively investing and giving. And so this year has been a lot about giving as much as we can to our community here, to the community online. How do we just give as much as we can has been a question that I've been asking my team a lot. And so much of that is because I do want to make sure that we are actively investing and that we're good members of our community. And I would like to be at a place, both as a man, as a human being, but as a man, as a citizen, as a business owner, a boss, a friend, in all those ways, I want to get to the point where my life is a surplus and that I'm giving far more than I'm taking. And that I feel like is a life well lived. One of the ways of categorizing a life well lived, but a rich life is a life in which you gave more than you took. I want to leave with Paris being like, oh, well, now we have to name a street after him because like we owe his ghost or he'll haunt us, you know? I think that's a good way of in a broad sense, lining up your goals for, you know, achievement in life. But I've already put a good 8 years solid into Paris. I have my citizenship. I'm here to stay. Why not double down and make it really stick? And so those are all the reasons why I don't think I'll ever go back to the United States. I think there's a lot of hot topics and a lot of immediate reasons that come to mind of like why things are frustrating, difficult, or a little bit scary right now, or very scary, depending on where you're at. A constitutional crisis is nothing to lightly usher away. But this is a thing that I've been thinking about for the last year, because after getting my citizenship, the question was open. Like, okay, well, I can go anywhere. I can leave France and come back. I can do whatever I want. What do I want? Where do I want to be? And it's taken me most of the last year to get to the point where I have decided that what I really want is to commit to my life here in Paris and to make the absolute most of it that I can and to give the most that I'm able to this city, because it's given me so much. It has given me a rebirth and a new life. Very much a new lease on life, but genuinely not more than the next chapter of my life. I think this is absolutely has been the beginning of the next act. And speaking of giving me a new lease on life, thanks to Alexander James Howe and all my patrons, Alexander being an old school patron who I met way back in the day here in Paris, shortly after I first moved here. It's crazy that you're still with me. Thank you so much. And thanks to all my patrons, because Paris has given me this new lease on life, but the people that have helped it to become a reality and made it a viable business have been my patrons. If you'd like to support my channel, you can do so at patreon.com/jswanson. Join all these amazing people that you're seeing on the screen right now. Get some perks, behind the scenes peeks, digital wallpapers, some polls, some previews. They got to see this video before anybody else. And of course, just thank you for watching in general. And I'm really close to 100,000 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, if these videos just pop up and you've never subscribed, would you subscribe? I'm hoping that I can get to 100,000 subscribers before the heat death of the universe, or my death. Like, I would like to actually see it happen. So if you want to be a part of that, that'd be great. Thank you for watching. And of course, if you're thinking of leaving America, or you've left and you're never going back, or you are going back, I'd just love to hear what you think in the comments below. Keep it civil, please. My dad is here, which is making me think about this a lot. We're gonna go on a little trip soon, so I'll share that with you shortly. Thanks for watching.